Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Peter Rodriguez, who is a senior associate dean and economist at the Darden School in Virginia. Peter, real pleasure to have you.
Doug, it's my pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
So let's talk about some of the kind of crazy things going on in the world economy. We've seen in the past few years subprime mortgages, which kind of crushed America, and bankruptcy in Greece. Can you explain to us a little bit what lies behind this cycle of boom and bust that a lot of economies have seen, and why can't we flatten that out?
That's a great question. It's really strikes to the heart of modern economics, and it really points out the gaps that we have in our understanding. In a difficult way, it also tends to divide economists about what they believe and what they believe about the economy and how it really works. People talk about Keynesians, neoclassicists, Austrians, and the like. But what it really lets us know is that economics still has a ways to go into making the management of the economy into a science. But beyond that, we can see a few other things. Booms and busts aren't new. We know that. We've always had booms and busts, especially in modern economies. But there are a few things that really stand out in recent cycles. And among the top ones in my mind are changing demographics, changing world order when we see giant economies like China and India, but others also sort of emerge from the doldrums that they had in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and really begin to take center stage. And that means changing roles for existing economies and Western powers, and adjusting to that's hard. And lastly, I'd just say that there's a combination of innovations in finance and other technologies that meets up with our ignorance about how people behave and aggregate their behavior in the economy. And we've missed in a pretty big way on a few of those recently, and our institutions haven't caught up for that.
Or maybe just aggregates the ignorance, possibly.
So, yeah. Well, we hope it averages out, but unfortunately, it sometimes goes the other way.
Yeah, reversion to the mean of some sort.
That's right.
So you use the phrase that, referring to being able to manage the economy as some sort of science. Do you actually think that will ever happen, or is the economy just so strange because it's basically human nature?
Well, that's great. It's almost an epistemological question about what we can do and can predict. I definitely think that we can avoid the most extreme circumstances, that we ought to be able to predict extraordinary collapses. Now, some would disagree with me right away, but I think we've already seen some ability to do that. It's hard to mistake just how much smoother the path of the global economy became in Western economies that were mostly high income. After the Second World War, they really sort of flattened out, and we even had this great period of calm and peace, which we called, the Great Moderation in the United States and other places. And what we really meant by referring to it that way is that things like inflation, rapid swings in unemployment were present, but not extreme as we'd seen them in the past. And I think that is definitely possible. We can smooth it out a bit without viewing it as a perfectly manageable system. But all the way, no, that's probably not realistic.
It seems one of the major tools of the central banks is their ability to control interest rates. Is that enough to allow them to control the economy, or is it better or perhaps worse to give governments more involvement in our day-to-day economy?
I think that's a pretty good question too. The interest rate is a tool. It's highly influential. It's insufficient. You couldn't manage all that together. You also have to have sound banking rules and understand when the banking system changes or creates innovations like collateralized debt obligations, or even deregulates in a way where we can't really predict what's going to happen. It's a highly complex system. So interest rates are only one tool that's needed. It would also be a little bit aggressive, and I think unwise, to suggest that governments are smart enough or have enough foresight to make these big changes. They can make nuanced changes that occur over the long run, and they can manage and regulate and provide good, timely information, and then they just have to let the system run, and we have to be prepared for that. But no, interest rate management is going to get more difficult and weaker, and the monetary system is always inventing new things, new monies, new things that allow people to make transactions, and that keeps a constant state of pressure on the system to adapt quickly. That's where we often run into the biggest problem. We just don't adapt quickly enough. Hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about another tool that governments have, which is taxation. And there are those people who are more on the libertarian, low taxation side, and there are others on the other side who want to distribute the wealth in a different way. And that's certainly a great power that the government has. And there have been tests all over the world for at least decades, if not hundreds of years, if we're talking about the modern economy. How come we can't come to a consensus about what's really best for the economy in terms of high or low taxes?
Well, I think what happens with the tax discussions is that they're inherently personal and political, and we understand that they are, at some fundamental level, about doing two things: finding a way to finance the needs of government, everything from the military to social services to other things that reflect the values of a society, and also they're a redistribution tool, one way or the other, and that becomes quite difficult. What we've seen recently is that we have a predominance of income taxes around the world. And that's great, but you don't necessarily want to tax a productive behavior. There are many great ways to produce income, and often producing income is consistent with job growth and entrepreneurial activity, all the things we like and want to encourage. But it also reflects another objective, and that objective is to ensure that those at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum have ample chances to succeed in life, and that's become more difficult, especially now that the income distribution has grown wider in most economies and appears to be doing so continually. This is a challenge. Income is the flow variable, wealth is the stock variable, and over time, wealth has tended to accumulate and then needed to be redistributed to keep societies peaceful and working, and that's not easy. However, I'll put a few things on the table. I think that we have seen an increasing tolerance and enthusiasm for taxes that penalize behaviors we don't want to see, whether it's the use of carbon or unhealthy habits. And I think we'll continue to see that take place. And I think we recognize that income taxes have some sort of a political upper threshold beyond which it's very hard to proceed. It's not easy to know what to do after that point, but it becomes very personal. You start to raise taxes in France, and suddenly Gerard Depardieu and others are leaving the country, and it's chaos.
Right. So it's not what you're saying. It's not just an economic decision. It is a more political or personal decision. We are talking with Peter Rodriguez, a senior associate dean and economist at the Darden School in Virginia. He's been talking to us about some macroeconomics, and although we haven't, in fact, focused on the United States, I'd like to now move a little bit south because you have a real expertise in Latin America. And people talk about Latin America as an emerging market, but it's a pretty big place. A, is that the right term to use for it? And B, are there investment opportunities there, or is it does it continue to be a place that just might be so dangerous?
It's a continent with a lot of variety within it. There are absolutely great investment opportunities there, and many of the economies are emerging, but some of them are quite mature, and I would say emerging is probably the wrong moniker. If you looked at a Mexico or a Brazil, they're very large. They're really middle-income economies that don't have much danger of really backsliding or doing the things that we often worry about. And then there are a host of other smaller economies in a variety of states of development. The big opportunities there, I think, are around natural resources, but also around some small businesses, and in particular in the larger economies. Brazil has enormous potential. It also has significant challenges, but I think there'll be great opportunities for investment there, particularly in energy and other agricultural-based fields. I think they'll develop in other ways too, but the long-term prospects for that are huge. Go ahead.
In terms of their political stability, is this something that we can count on, that they are getting more stable, or are we dealing with regimes like Venezuela where, for example, gosh, it seems like you don't know who's going to be in charge next year?
That's a great question. They have one of the most difficult situations around their very wide income distribution. It's a real haves and have-nots problem. I think it's going to be put on display more prominently at the World Cup and at the Olympics, which will follow very soon. But I don't think they're going to backslide to become a Venezuela. I think they already have some fairly strong social institutions in place. They're always tested, but I don't expect backsliding there. But they could grow kind of slowly. There was always this bad joke about Brazil that it's the country of the future, and it always will be. And I think that there's some lingering sense of we're overdue.
Mm-hmm.
But my optimism is pretty good for them.
And when you spoke about investing, you said in natural resources. Do you mean actually buying the commodities, or simply investing in companies that are exploiting those commodities?
I think it's the latter more than anything else. I think what's going to happen for the commodities is they're going to be made cheaper, or the prices will be held in check because of the productive capacity of a nation like Brazil. I think their ability to expand to produce anything from sugar, and that includes ethanol and other fuel sources, but also oil and natural gas itself will be hugely important. Their ability to become a breadbasket for certainly the Americas, if not mostly the world, has barely begun to be realized, and I expect a lot more from them.
And just in terms of government corruption, a lot of these countries are not rated high on that scale. It's a little bit worrisome. Do you think that if someone's investing, it's okay to put his money there?
You have to be really careful. Corruption is a big problem in many parts of the world. It is a problem in Latin America, almost everywhere. I think in the larger, more publicly traded firms, you can have some security that the institutions will protect you. But in smaller firms, if they can survive it, and manage it, they're quite skilled. There are many traps to that. Foreign investors, I think, have a hard time in Latin America and other places, and they will for a while. I think I'd be more worried about a Venezuela as a reasonable example of that, or even a Bolivia, where it's not so much corruption as it is a mistrust of markets and a sort of very hesitant attitude towards business investment that I think is going to make them grow more slowly and be an ultimately poor place to invest. An economy that might surprise you would be Colombia. I think Colombia is highly stable and has shown a lot of great development. It looks nothing like the economy of the 1980s. They have a way to go, but they've made a lot of progress. They're a surprise.
All right. We have been talking with Peter Rodriguez from the Darden School. He's an economist. He's been telling us about one half of the globe. And Peter, we're going to have you back to talk about Africa, China, India at a different time. But in the last few seconds, just tell me, how can people follow your work?
Oh, well, that's great. You can always find me at the Darden School of Business website, and that's just www.darden.virginia.edu. You can also find me at the Great Courses and find some of my work on why economies rise and fall and the future of economic supremacy, and that's a great company offering products for download or video. And if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet aggressively, and my handle is at PROFP_ROD, at Prof. PROD.
All right, Peter, we will put links to all of those in the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com. Thanks again for your time.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks very much, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.